You're listening to the Life Coaching Secrets Podcast, episode number 16. Did you know that life coaches are needed now more than ever? I'm Frank Macri, founder of Thriving Coach Academy. I've trained over 1,000 coaches and helped them launch their own successful coaching businesses. If you want to make an incredible income and impact as a coach and have a lot of fun doing it, I'll show you exactly how to get it done. This is Life Coaching Secrets. What's up, coaches? In this episode, I am going to talk about how to start a coaching session. I'm going to break down what are the biggest mistakes that I have seen and heard coaches make, and I'm going to reveal how to avoid them so you can start your sessions off powerfully. Now, it's good to be back on the podcast. I took a vacation. As some of you know, that if you've been listening, I am taking a vacation every single month this year. And the most recent vacation was a week-long trip to southern Utah. And let me just say, I have never been to Utah before. I had no idea what to expect, and I fell in love. I traveled all around southern Utah, exploring and hiking the canyons, Antelope Canyon, Horseshoe Bend, Zion National Park. Oh my gosh, it was just so majestic. So now I am back in Seattle, and I recently touched base with some of our coaches, and I wanted to celebrate one of our coaches who's crushing it this year. His name's Rick. He's a life purpose coach, and he has just been doing so phenomenally well this year. So I touched base with our coaches. I asked them how their business is going, and I like to keep track and keep a pulse on how well our coaches are doing and the money that they're bringing into their business. So Rick shared with me that this year he started out January and he earned $6,000 for the month. And then he went on to earn $8,000 in February, then went on to earn $12,000 during the month of March, then $14,000 in the month of April, and May is the first month that he hit the $20,000 mark in just the month of May. What? So cool. So he is projected to earn well over $100,000 this year. And yeah, you heard that right. $20,000 in a month. Coaches are earning this kind of money. This is what some doctors and lawyers make. And this is what our coaches are doing. So big kudos to Rick for just crushing it, doing his work as a life purpose coach. All right. So in a coaching session, there are 3 parts to any coaching session. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. No matter the duration of the session, it is essential that as the coach, you honor the beginning, the middle, and the end of a session, okay? When you honor all of that, you will give your client a sense of completion. They will feel like they were able to go from point A to point B. So I am going to focus in this episode on what to look for in that beginning of the session and some of the mistakes to avoid. Now, I'm just giving you an overview in this episode. Of course, if you really want to master this, you will need professional supervision to make sure you are doing this right, okay? This is not something that information alone is going to help you do. You've got to apply it, you've got to practice it, and you need to get supervised feedback on it. So the first mistake that coaches make in the beginning of their session is they show up to the session with assumptions, okay? So your impact as a coach will not come from just what happens in the session itself, but also the way that you show up to your coaching sessions. So no matter how experienced or successful you are in life, you are also still a human. And like all other humans, you have biases, you have assumptions, you have limiting beliefs, and you have judgments about people, about the world we live in, and even about yourself. So it's essential that you learn how to put your own biases aside before you go into a coaching session. I imagine like you have all your thoughts and all your assumptions about life and the way the world works, and you imagine yourself just putting that all in a box and setting that box to the side for your coaching session. When your session ends, you can just go back to having your own judgments and opinions and biases. So the reason why you want to do this is because it allows you to show up with pure openness in a session. It allows you to create a space for anything to be possible for your client. So I call this having a blank canvas. That is the term that I use for describing this experience. You show up to your sessions with a blank canvas. So if you were to give an artist a canvas that already had paint all over it, then that might limit the artist's creativity because they might have less to work with. A blank canvas allows the artist to have unlimited potential with what they can create and where they can go with their art. Okay, so for example, let's say that you recently experienced a breakup in your life and you go to your coaching session and you have a client who shows up to the session wanting coaching around their relationship and challenges they're going through with their significant other. So how can you show up with full presence and curiosity? How can you keep your thoughts about your own breakup out of the session? This is what it means to have a blank canvas. You've got to be willing to set your own life and your own thoughts aside and be fully present to creating anything with the client. So you will know that you are honoring this, that you are leaving out your assumptions. You're going to know that you're doing this when you leave coaching sessions and you feel inspired as the coach by an insight or something that your client comes up with during the call. So very often I will leave coaching sessions where I'm the coach and I am blown away by the breakthrough that my client had, and I can use the breakthrough they had in my own life. That would not be possible if I limited their imagination because I was projecting only my experience onto them. Okay, so when you do this, when you have a blank canvas, you create a container of non-judgment. And when you do that, it allows your client to think at the highest possible level. Now, one of the wonderful things about being a coach is that no two coaching sessions are ever alike. So when you have a client bring up a topic on something that maybe you've already coached another person on, it is important to not assume that your client is going to benefit from the same approach you took with the previous client, okay? No two sessions are alike. No two clients are alike. So you want to treat every client and every session as a blank canvas. Now, part of having a blank canvas is also about setting aside any judgments or doubts that you have about yourself that could impact your presence in the session. So the biggest assumption that I see coaches have is they go into their sessions thinking, I need to solve my client's problem. And when they think that, it puts a lot of pressure on the coach. So you might have a 30-minute session and you may think, oh my gosh, I need to solve my client's problem in the next 30 minutes. So when you have that kind of belief, you show up to the session trying to rescue and solve or heal and fix your client's problems. You will show up really desperate to rescue them. And this impacts the session overall in a negative way. You do not want to feel like you need to ever rescue your clients from their problems. All right. So the thought you want to have instead going into a session is simply, I don't need to solve my client's problem. I can't wait to see what my client comes up with. This is going to be fun. One of the thoughts that I also like to have going into a session is I have no idea where this session is going to go, but I know it's going to be amazing. So I have no idea where this session is going to go, and I know that it's going to be amazing. So don't go into your coaching sessions with any kind of formula or list of questions that you're going to ask ahead of time. You need to learn how to develop your skill for listening deeply and knowing how to ask powerful questions using your intuition, not following any kind of formula. So we teach in great depth both of those things in Thriving Coach Academy. We teach all of our coaches right away how to listen at the deepest possible level and also how to generate powerful questions that are going to get the biggest impact. So that is mistake number one. It's going into the coaching call with assumptions about yourself, about your clients, and also about the challenges that they're going through. When you can release all those assumptions, you show up to your sessions ready to rock your client's world, ready for them to rock their own world with whatever insights they come up with. All right, so the second biggest mistake coaches make when they're starting out their sessions is and this is more of a semantic mistake, is I hear a lot of coaches say, so do you need anything from this call? Or is there anything I can help you with today? And it drives me a little crazy. So of course, if someone is showing up to your session, they need support with something. So again, this is more of a semantic mistake that some coaches make. The fix for this is very simple. Instead of asking, do you need anything? Or is there anything I can help you with? Which are just yes or no questions. All you need to do is switch the way you word the question. So you could say, how can I support you? What can I support you with today? Or what would you like to get out of our call today? Very simple, but makes a big difference. If you were to ask, do you need anything? Sometimes the client wonders, I don't know. Do I need anything? So then a few minutes of the session go wasted with them trying to figure out if they need anything versus if you just can dive right in and say, what is it that will get you the most from our session today? So that's the second mistake. The third biggest mistake that I see coaches make at the beginning of sessions is they over-acknowledge the client, okay? So your client will start out sharing what it is that they're struggling with. They're going to start to explain their current circumstances or their current situation that they're stuck in. So if the client were to say 5 sentences and you were to reflect back 10 sentences in an acknowledgement, then that is a sign that you are not properly listening. Now, this would only happen if you are struggling to stay focused on what your client's saying, or maybe something's distracting you. So when you over-acknowledge your client, when you parrot back more than what they're saying, it ends up sounding very messy and very sloppy. And also, you end up taking too much airtime. So I tell our coaches that you never want to be speaking more than your clients in a session. They will speak more because whenever you're speaking, you're taking away space for them to come to their own realizations. So if you are taking up too much airtime in your sessions, if you are talking more than your client, that's got to change. If you also over-acknowledge your client, then you might end up complicating their problem even more. So let me share an example of this. Let's say that in the beginning of your session, you ask your client, how can I support you today? And they say, well, I'm struggling to figure out if I want to stay in my job or go. I go into work every day and I just feel like I'm going through the motions, so I'm not quite sure what to do. All right, let's say your client says that. Now, let's imagine that a coach over-acknowledges. Here's what that could sound like. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you're trying to figure out if you want to stay in your job or not. So you're going into work every day and you're questioning that. And you said that you feel like you're going through the motions. So that's creating more stress for you and you're just not quite sure what to do. So you're doubting your decision that you want to make and you're just trying to make sense of all that. So this is a common challenge I see coaches make. So now when I did that example, do you hear how that ends up sounding just very messy and sloppy? How it takes up a lot of airtime? And do you also hear how that complicated the client's problem because so many extra words were added? So it just puts more stress on the client. And it also puts words in their mouth. So even though the intention is to really capture what the client's saying, and usually coaches have good intentions when they do this and they don't realize they're really doing it. But when a coach over-acknowledges, the client actually feels unheard because so many extra words are being put into their mouth, okay? And also, if you're reflecting and parroting back so much, it could be a little bit uncomfortable and strange. If you say something and someone just parrots back the exact same things you're saying, it could just be a little bit awkward. So the fix for this is to keep your acknowledgements simple in the session. They only need to be a sentence or two. Your client could say a full 10-sentence paragraph, and you could reflect back in just a sentence or two what you heard. Just get to the heart of what your client is sharing. So in the example I shared before, if your client were to explain how they're not sure if they should stay in their job or go, they're going into work every day, they're feeling like they're going through the motions, they're not sure what to do, all that you need to say is, it sounds like you're questioning your career path. Tell me more about that. Do you hear how much cleaner and simpler that is while still showing that you heard what was at the essence of what the client was going through? So that is the fix for this. Keep your acknowledgments simple. They only need to be a sentence or two. Just get to the heart of what your client is saying and go from there. All right. So the fourth mistake that I hear coaches make when they start out sessions is they don't set a clear agenda. okay? They don't set a clear agenda. So let me define what is an agenda. Agenda setting is one of the first skills that we teach all of our coaches in the academy. So an agenda is knowing exactly what the client wants and what is getting in their way. So let's imagine that your client comes to the session and they're standing on the edge of a cliff and they're looking out into the distance at another cliff that they want to try to get to, but there's this big gap between where they are and where they want to be. So they're just looking into this big abyss, this gap, and they're just trying to they can't figure out quite how to get there. So you need to understand, where are they right now? Where do they want to be? And what is creating that gap for them? What is getting in their way? So we call this entire process setting the agenda. So when you are setting the agenda with your client, you will need to use lots of clarifying questions in the beginning of your session. You don't want to just dive right in and start to coach them around their problem when you haven't clearly defined exactly what the problem is. So, for example, if your client is struggling with feeling unfulfilled in their job, then you might want to understand where they are right now, right? They're on the edge of the cliff. So let's define that. You might say things like, okay, so tell me about your job right now. When you say that you are unfulfilled in that job, tell me what you mean by that. So you clarify until you can really isolate what is their current challenge. And then you help them define, where do they want to be? So you might say, so what do you want to be different? What would you really like to get from this call? So now they've defined where they are, where they want to be, and then we figure out what's the gap. What do they perceive their challenge to be? And you can ask questions like, okay, so what's getting in the way of you having fulfillment in your work right now? What is stopping you from experiencing fulfillment right now? So that's going to reveal what is preventing them from being at point B, all right? So that whole experience, that takes time, and a lot of coaches just rush right through that and they just dive into the deep end without really knowing where it is that they're coaching. So you'll know that this is happening in your sessions if you feel like you're all over the place with your clients, if you're not quite sure what to ask or where to go, if your client isn't quite sure where they want to go in the session too, and they leave unsatisfied. If any of that's happening, it is very likely that it's because the agenda wasn't clearly set in the beginning of the session. So if you don't set the agenda clear, then the rest of the session just feels like it's just kind of, we're bumping all over the place. Okay, so after you have the agenda set, then you proceed to coach them on bridging the gap between where they are and where they want to be. Now, the fifth and the final mistake that I see most coaches make when they're starting sessions is they rush to fix or solve their client's problem. Okay, they rush to try to solve or fix their client's problem. So what this sounds like is a coach, right after a coach hears about the thing that their client is struggling with, they follow up with questions like, oh, so what can you do to solve that? Or have you tried trying blank? Okay, so lots of questions about actions and trying new approaches and coming up with new strategies. All of that is not appropriate at the beginning of a coaching session. It might feel appropriate. You might feel like that's the most helpful thing to do, but it is often the least helpful thing to do. So the reason why you don't want to rush to fix or solve your client's problems is a few things. First of all, you're not responsible for fixing or solving your client's problem. That's the first thing. Second, you need to examine your client's thoughts that they're having about their problem. So if you rush too quickly to help them start to come up with new action plans, it's not going to be effective because they can't solve a problem with the same mindset that created the problem. So this goes back to understanding just the philosophy of a coach. Okay, so one of the philosophies that we teach our students is that every single problem is a thought problem. Every single problem is a thought problem, okay? Any problem we have in life is created because of the thoughts we're having. Okay, the thoughts are impacting how we're feeling, which is impacting how we're acting and behaving, and all of our actions end us up with the results we have. So if there's any kind of problem we have in our life, we need to peel back and understand what's the thought we had that created that problem. So if you rush too quickly to try to help your clients start coming up with their own plans of action in the beginning of a session, it's not going to be effective. They cannot solve a problem with the same mindset that created that problem. So I will often say, you need to coach the person, not the problem. Coach the person, not the problem, or coach the who, not the do. So don't coach them on what they need to do differently in the beginning of your session. Coach them on who they are at the core. What is the set of beliefs they're having that is creating this problem for them? You've got to peel it back and help them better understand and see their problem in a deeper way in order for them to resolve it. All right, so those are the top 5 mistakes that I see coaches make when they're starting out sessions and the fix, so that way you can avoid those mistakes and start those sessions off powerfully. Now, again, this is just giving you an overview. If you are really looking to master this and also know how to coach a middle and an end of a session, you are absolutely going to need to have lots and lots and lots of mentorship and supervision to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing right, what you're not doing right, and what you can improve upon. So if you're not yet enrolled in Thriving Coach Academy, what are you waiting for? Get yourself on an admissions call right away so we can figure out what your goals are and we can get you started immediately. All right, that's what I got on how to start a coaching session. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode. Hey, would you like access to powerful coaching tools you can use on yourself and clients right away? For being a listener of the podcast, I'm giving you a VIP guest pass to get a sneak peek into my coach training program. Inside, you'll learn our coaches' secret tool they use to transform their clients' lives. And you'll also get a training on how to launch a coaching business. Just head over to www.thrivingcoachacademy.com/VIP to get started. I'll see you on the inside.